great. So, let me go back to your career when you started playing music with Genesis back in the early 70s.
Yeah.
What do you remember from the recording of the 2 albums that you recorded with Genesis?
Well, I think principally the first one was very amateurish, very schoolboyish, but it was great fun. The second one was very much more professional and serious and much less fun, I think, putting it simply, because it was a novelty, the first album, and we hadn't had to play the songs all the time. By the time we came to do the second album, we'd been flogging the pieces to death for about 6 or 7 months. So they were very boring, to be honest, by that stage. So we were what's called going through the motions. I think we did it pretty well. We did it okay. But I can't say it was exciting. Whereas I found the first album very exciting. And of course, the truth of it is the second album is a lot better. But often the things that you enjoy in life most aren't the best ones, are they?
Yeah, I see. So, how was the experience playing with the other members of Genesis? What was it?
How was playing with the other members of Genesis? Well, great, because they were all very good musicians. Mike Robertson particularly was my buddy. We played 2 guitars in tandem together, so that was always the thing I loved most. And then joining up with Peter Gabriel and Tony Banks gave it a whole extra dimension. They were brilliant, each in their own way, and so it's a good combination. Yeah, very exciting.
What were the main reasons for leaving the band?
My main reason for the band was that before we'd gone on the road, I had, unfortunately, at the age of 17, I'd had something called glandular fever, which is a thing that teenagers and people in their early 20s tend to get. And when you've had that, your system gets very run down, and you have to be very careful for the next year and look after yourself. You know, eat well, sleep well. And I either didn't listen to what they said, or they didn't say it too much. But anyway, so going on the road with a pop group and sort of sleeping on people's floors in the drafty winter was not a good idea. And I got incredibly run down, and then I started getting terribly nervous about going on stage, and basically my health really went to pieces. It was grueling, and it was scary, to be honest, and I felt very pressurized by the whole thing of, you know, all these agents coming and seeing us, and we had to be brilliant every night. And there's something about, you know, most people in life, I think, probably can't take it. A few can, but I used to find this business of having to try and get on stage every night and be brilliant. I used to find it incredibly scary. And so I don't know how much the glandular fever affected me, but it certainly, my system was very run down. And if you're physically very run down, I think mentally you're prey to more gremlins. I mean, I basically had what a lot of actors suffer from, which is just a classic case of stage fright, that I was too young to realize it. I mean, I didn't have it straight away. That's why I was saying, I think it probably was because my body was so run down that I was kind of, you know, if you're even in a physical sense, if you get very run down, there's all sorts of, what's the word, I can't think of it, sort of bacteria and stuff within us, which will suddenly leap out and make us ill. And I think the same thing is true if you're very physically ill. You can mentally become prey, you know, to things. So I found it very difficult, really, in the end, and I ended up by getting a form of pneumonia called bronchial pneumonia. Actually, it wasn't as bad as the glandular fever, but that rather kind of knocked me back, really, and I tried to carry on, but really I was, my heart had kind of gone out of it, really, so that was it for me.
I see. So after leaving Genesis, you decided to study classical music, right?
Yeah, I did sort of by accident, really. It wasn't really by design, but I found myself listening to classical music in a way that my ears had been closed to. When I say classical music, it's a silly term, isn't it, in a way, because there's so much music. I mean, the classical period really is the Mozart, Beethoven period. I mean, I suppose, I used to hate it when they talked about serious music, but I suppose orchestrate. I really do want to be able to have the tools in my toolbox, if you like, to be able to write that kind of music. So I set off studying, and it was difficult because I couldn't read a note of music. So I was blessed to find a very lucky and patient piano teacher who taught me the rudiments of reading, which I found so boring, and then a classical guitar teacher, because I didn't play classical guitar, and he took me through a lot of Bach and stuff, and I qualified as a classical guitar teacher, studied orchestration and harmony and all the kind of what we call the nuts and bolts at the Guildhall School of Music part-time, and then I sort of emerged in the mid-70s with a sort of half classical technique. I mean, I'd studied so late it was never going to be brilliant, but, you know, I knew enough, and then came the Geese and the Ghost.
See. Except studying classical music, you had a collaboration with Phil Collins and Peter Gabriel, I think, right?
Sorry, say again?
Yeah, I'm saying that you studied classical music after leaving Genesis, and then you also had a collaboration with Phil Collins, and you played keyboards on the demos for Peter Gabriel.
That's right. Well, I think the thing was, you see, that I was in a way a bit like a tame Tony Banks, if you like, because I understood Peter's music, and I could play the piano better than I could before, but I was also going to do exactly what I was told, whereas I think Pete probably thought he couldn't have the whole of Genesis. What was the point? He'd left Genesis, and maybe that Tony would make a lot of suggestions which he didn't. So I was basically just sort of, you know, I was under orders, really, in the nicest possible way. So, yeah, that was great fun, because playing with Mike and Phil, what a great rhythm section they were. That was fun. And we did it in Trident, where we'd done Trespass, and I hadn't realised that's where Hey Jude was recorded as well.
So what do you remember from your first album, The Geese and the Ghost?
Well, I remember it taking a hell of a long time, because Mike kept going off and touring, and The Lamb turned into a double album, so we got squeezed on time, and it went on and on and on, and I had to do more and more of it, and eventually it became more of my album than Mike's. It was frustrating, very frustrating. I mean, I was nervous about it. By the time it came out, Punk had taken over, so it didn't have a chance. It got turned down by virtually everybody to start with. Nobody believed in it. Then a little American company picked it up, and it did quite well. So that was exciting. It was a stressful period, though, because for about a year, I thought the album was never going to come out.
In 1981, you began writing material with Andrew Latimer from CAMEL.
Andrew Latimer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So did he contact you? Did he invite you to join CAMEL? Or did you?
Actually, that contact came because my mother knew his mother, and he lived very close to me in London. So I just went over there, and he was looking for a different direction for CAMEL, I think, and so we tried a few things, and we wrote a couple of things. Ultimately, the direction stayed pretty similar to the old CAMEL, but there were a lot of different session musicians on it. We wrote a number of things, but only one of them, I think, made the album, N-Piece. And he was a great guy and a great guitarist.
Is there any unreleased material that you're going to release, or
with him?
Yeah, with him. Yeah.
I don't think so. No.
I see. In 1983, you released a pop album which was called Invisible Man.
Sorry, I did what?
Yeah, in 1983.
Yeah.
You released a mainstream album which was called Invisible Man.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I thought you did 1993. Yeah, well, you've got to remember, again, we're putting things into context, what I was saying earlier, that in those days, you see, we didn't have our own studios, well, a lot of us didn't, and if we had our own studios, they were very basic, so if you wanted to get a release, you had to do what the record company said, and you know, towards the end of the 70s, Geese the Ghost, Tark and all those kind of things were very unfashionable. First of all, we had punk, then we had the new romantics, and the emphasis was everything went into reverse gear. Everybody had to be doing the same thing. It was stupid, really. I mean, looking back on it, it was really pathetic. I mean, there was nothing wrong with punk if you were in your late teens and early 20s, but the idea that older people should have to go back into reverse gear, give up what they were doing, and go and start playing 3-minute songs very irritating quite quickly, and I always was worried that some of the fans must wonder what the hell I was doing. But pretty much the whole of my record career in the early days was dictated by what record companies said. You know, we just did what they said.
So, except your solo work, you were also involved in a variety of musical projects like soundtracks. Can you tell me about your work in soundtracks?
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Yeah, sorry. Except your solo work as a musician, you have been involved in several soundtracks from movies.
Soundtracks?
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't actually I've done a lot of TV programs. I haven't actually done a film. I haven't done a film soundtrack.
So you wrote music for TV?
A lot of music for television, yes.
Yeah, okay.
That's really how I make my living now.
I see.
I mean, I make some money for my albums, but the majority of my income comes from my television music.
Yeah, so what are you up to now? Do you have a new solo album?
No, I did two solo albums last year. So this year I'm back concentrating on my TV music. Hopefully next year there's going to be a new solo album.
Do you intend to tour about it? Do you have any plans for concerts regarding the promotion of the album?
The answer to that, to be honest, is almost definitely no. I mean, I never liked the idea of touring after my experience with Genesis, and I don't think it wouldn't really be cost effective. I mean, I could go out as an acoustic guitarist, but the truth of it is that my music is complicated enough. It would take so long to rehearse a lot of this stuff that actually going out and doing concerts on it wouldn't. I don't think the pounds, shillings, and pence would add up, I'm afraid. Also, you know, I can't be away from my television, library music for too long because, as I said, that's where the majority of my living is. I sometimes wish I could be split into two and have a clone, but no, I think I'm not ruling out at some stage doing maybe a one-off concert, but I'd never actually go on the road as such. I'm a composer now. Yeah.
So what would you recommend to the new bands as they start their career right now? What would you recommend them in terms of touring and in terms of recording? Any tips, any advices for them?
Well, I think the truth of this, the pressure is ever more on now to play live because records aren't selling as they used to, unless you're an Adele. So I think a young band have got to tour and tour and tour. That's the answer to that one.
Yeah, I see. Okay, Anthony. Okay, that was my last question.